I Should Be Writing number 370. Hi there, welcome to I Should Be Writing, the podcast for wannabe fiction writers. I'm your host, Mur Lafferty. And the silly thing about doing these somewhat personal podcasts is that I have nothing new to report if I am actually efficient and do more than one recording in a day. So I'm at the exact same level as I was yesterday, as working on I Should Be Writing, the book, promoting the two new books coming out this month, and preparing for 2 conventions. A lot of stuff going on. But I'm up to it. I think. I hope. Anyway. So today I'm going to want to talk about how we're dealing with New Year's resolutions. I've written that I dislike New Year's resolutions simply because they're almost, by now, they're pretty much this is what I plan to fail at in the next 3 weeks. I like to come up with goals for the year. And if you're listening to this show, it's likely that you're a creative person who wants some creative goals in the coming year. It's silly for me to assume such things. But I've been playing around with tools to help me deal with this. And, I love gamification. Some people hate that word. Some people hate gamification when it gets scary, which is true. Like anything, it can go a little haywire. Just like the smart house idea, I got a Google Home, and I got it for one specific reason that has nothing to do with controlling my thermostat or my fridge or my car. But apparently you can do that now with the right thermostats, fridges, and cars, and that just scares the hell out of me because I know it can be hacked. I don't want anybody to hack my car. It just makes me nervous. But that doesn't mean that the little speaker in my kitchen isn't fun to play with. And so, as long as gamification isn't tweaking little dopamine areas of your brain in order to get you to do something unsavory, I think it's great. What am I talking about? The magic spreadsheet was gamification. It allowed you to gain points and get credit for the longest chain and all that. Since then, I've moved on to Habitica, which used to be Habit RPG, but it's Habitica now, and it is a little role-playing game online. You can also get the app where you can you write down your own habits, daily chores, to-do list, and reward section. Habits are things like avoid soda, avoid cigarettes, get up on time, floss every day. And dailies are more things you need to make sure you do every day. For example, take your medicine, do the dishes. Sometimes people get confused about habits and dailies, but I've done enough to keep them separate in my head. Then your to-do list is your to-dos. You do one thing, you cross it off the list, and it doesn't come back, or maybe it'll come back in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, but it's not a regular thing you have to do. When you do these things, you get gold, you get loot, which are eggs and hatching potions, and you gain experience points. The hatching potions are a number of very strange animals, and the eggs are for a number of strange animals, and the hatching potions allow you to hatch different animals of different colors. So you can have a golden tiger, or a black fox, or a skeletal panda bear. Oh, you also drops include food. So if you feed the food to your pets, they eventually grow up and you can ride them. And you've got your little 8-bit character at the top of the page. And what you can do with the money is you can buy equipment. So you got a lot of stuff going on here to get you to floss your teeth, or meditate, or take your medicine, or work out. Another added incentive is you can create a party. And so you and your friends can go off and fight a boss. And the problem here is when you don't do your daily chores, the boss hits everybody and you all lose hit points. So now you're hurting your friends in the game if you don't floss your teeth or take your medicine or whatever you have in your daily column. It's interesting and motivating, I believe is the word I'm looking for. It's fun. It certainly gets me interested to collect all the equipment and dress up my character and give her a neat little pet to follow around. And what's interesting I found out is there are a lot of authors who are on it now. So there are guilds you can join where people of like minds can show up and chat about whatever you've built the guild around. So there are health nuts and financial. I'm in a financial guild with financial, and they can do challenges. So the guilds come up with challenges. So, for example, last year I did a challenge where it had me saving. For each week of the year, I saved that much money. If you, I'm not explaining this well. Sorry, let's backtrack. If you give each week of the year a number, you've got 1 through 52. Well, each week you have to put that much money into savings. So week 1, you put $1, no problem. By week 52, you put $52 in. If you do that, you save over $1,000 in the year. I did not know that, and it worked. It was pretty cool. So I'm doing it again this year. By now, I've got $3 in my new piggy bank. But you can join these guilds and talk to other people who have the same desires and goals that you do. Mary Robinette Kowal's on it. She's pretty active in the Ink Slingers Guild. I think Elizabeth Bear's on it, but I haven't seen her here. I've just seen her talk about it elsewhere. Oddly enough, the one thing it's missing is like a friends list. Because you can have your adventuring party, which can be up to 8 of you. And pretty much got me and my husband and a couple of our friends in the same party. And we've been in the same party for years. And you can talk to people in your guild, but you can't actually befriend anybody. It's kind of weird. But I love it. And I think it's a fun way to try to keep track of your self-betterment. Like I said, it's Habitica.com, and they're not paying me to say this. I use it. I love it. They have apps for both Android and iOS. And feel free, if you do join, to come on. I'm usually active on Ink Slingers. I have an I Should Be Writing guild, but we don't really do much. I'd like to do more, but that's on me. But come on in, say hi. But the thing I just figured out, and if you like the whole fantasy role-playing game thing, you're going to come along right with me, and I found out about this through Habitica, is For the Words. I actually think that's kind of a silly name, because it doesn't say what it is. And it's a fantasy role-playing game that is designed completely around your writing. I'm pretty low level still, but I can choose a monster to fight. I want to fight a Renew. It looks like a pig bug kind of thing. Yep, that's what I'm going to call it, a pig bug. Or an elephant bug. Anyway, it's a weird looking bug. To fight the Renew, I have no requirements. I have to write 200 words in 30 minutes. Within the browser window, you have to write 200 words in 30 minutes. It saves. I prefer to write in Scrivener, but what I end up doing is I write in the browser and then I just cut and paste to Scrivener. The browser also, the website saves whatever you write, so you don't have to worry about losing it. And when you beat the creature, you get drops. And when you get drops, you can, again, we go into the loot thing. This actually has crafting. You can either buy a pair of boots, or you can kill enough monsters to get enough stuff to craft a pair of boots, which is what I'm trying to do. I find it really interesting. There are quests. Right now I have a quest of I found an amulet and I have to keep it safe. The way to keep it safe is I have to write 5 days in a row while the amulet's in my inventory. So if I don't write today, then I lose that amulet and I have to start the quest over again. It's an interesting place. I'm having fun with it so far. I don't necessarily know what the gear does. For example, on Habitica, the gear, you have attributes such as wisdom and strength and perception, stuff like that. And each one depends on how much you hit the boss or how much the boss hits you. That kind of thing. Or how much loot drops. That's good for rogues when you finally choose your character class. Here I'm not sure how that works because I don't have any equipment yet. But I don't know how my attack stats will actually translate into the words I'm actually writing. But we'll see. I'll do a report back. This does have an option where you can read other people's work. I haven't been using it for that, but it looks like there are blogs on here. Looks like there's fanfic. I'm just trying to come through with, sometimes the old phrase, I should be writing, doesn't do it enough. But when you think, I should be getting my character a new pair of boots, or I should be protecting a completely fake amulet in a completely fake story, with no real-world repercussions if I lose it, that might actually tweak the right synapse in your brain to make you think, oh, I gotta go get some writing done. I gotta say, I've had a pretty busy day, and I'm kind of tired, but I know that I have to get my writing done, or else I'm gonna lose all that traction I've gained so far on this stupid amulet quest. I will also get more stuff toward my ultimate goal of getting a pair of boots. Also, the stuff you write on For the Words is not automatically public, so don't worry about that. This site is in beta, I think. I'm just looking at the news now, and they say they're shutting down the forum because there's a problem. So, I hate forums anyway, so I don't go there. But they say one of their goals for this year is to make it easier to connect with other users on the site. Find friends, embark on quests together, create writing groups, defeat large monsters together, edit and peer review your work, and a lot more. Guys, this sounds like what half of you are asking me how to find out. So, really, you do have to pay for it. It's a little weird in that, let's see, you don't buy a subscription with money. You buy these crystals for money. If you play any free-to-play game, you know what I'm talking about. You buy the crystals with your money, and with the money, you buy time on the site. You get a month for free, so you can try it out. And I think you can find these crystals, but they're pretty rare. I'm not entirely sure. I'm still working it out myself. You get 11 crystals for $1. And you can buy them in, like, 1 month subscription is 44 crystals, so $4. That's not bad. If they're going to do all the things they promise us, which is the RPG plus all that community building stuff with the peer groups and critiques and writing groups and all that, I think I just said 3 redundant things, sorry. Then it's worth it, definitely. But, anyway, it's For the Words. It's still in early access, still in development, but I'm having fun with it. If you're ever curious why gamification works, it's got to do with your brain. It's your brain really doesn't care what kind of reward it gets, which is weird. Which is why games like, the cow clicking game, and if you push a button and something happens, your brain's like, hey, that's cool. Stimulus and response. So when you write words, you're just writing words. But if you write words and then you gain something because of it, that's exciting. Even if what you get is a poofy, drawn fantasy. I'm not entirely thrilled with the art on the site. It's not bad. It's just not really my taste. But even if you get a strange pair of boots for an avatar, that's still the dopamine hit of, oh, I earned something. That's why it works. You do something, you get something, your brain releases dopamine, and you're happy. Coming up, we have interviews with Jason Chabot and Kylie Chan. And remember, after these interviews, they will be a little less frequent while I get my feet under me and start podcasting more regularly. And apologies to those authors whose interviews I've sat on for too long. Welcome back to I Should Be Writing. I'm pleased to welcome on to the podcast Jason Chabot, author of Below, Broken Sky Chronicles, Book 1. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. You have, I just gotta jump in here and say, your book starts in such an interestingly dark and yet sympathetic place. It actually surprised me.
Oh, great.
And first I want to talk about what your book's about, but then I want to talk to you about how you created you can talk about the first scene as well, but just tell us what it's about, because I want to ask you how you started the book that way and why you decided to go that brutal, that fast.
Good plan. Well, Below, the whole series, in fact, it's a young adult science fiction / fantasy / adventure. And it's about two main characters. Elia is is the character who lives in Below. And then Elia lives in Above and Hawk lives in Below. And they are both struggling with demons in their past as they try to learn about who they are and where they live and what the reality that they face truly is, and how perceptions can really deceive, and how their perception of one thing can be completely different than that reality. And so it was a really interesting process for me to explore that as I did my writing and started this first book. And so Elia has been a child laborer from a young age, and has lived in extreme poverty and sees no future for herself. Whereas Hawk himself has come from a family with a greater wealth, but he's lost all that because he becomes a criminal and has been banished as an exile from his city. And so he then starts dealing with a lot of mental issues that plague him, hallucinations and doubts about whether he's a truly good person or not.
And those doubts are and when I say brutal, it's not like the first scene is full of violence. It's just, he is scrounging in the dirt for worms, and someone falls, and he runs and looks for wealth on the person, and is delighted when he finds a gold tooth on this dead person that has fallen to his death. And it's like, you managed to put him in a horrible situation, let him face a situation without any apparent empathy, and yet you still make him sympathetic. How did you do that?
Thank you so much. That's a real compliment, because that was definitely the goal. I wanted that sense of desperation right from the start, so that there was no mistaking it when someone picked up the book and started reading it. And obviously I wanted a bit of a hook too, so that when you turn to the first page and you read about a body falling out of the sky, you think, well, how is that even possible? But with Hawk, I really wanted to investigate the two sides to people, so the good side and the bad side. I wanted my characters to be very well-rounded in that sense. And I guess my approach was to show that desperation right from the get-go. And how can you do that better than being in such a bad situation that your only source of food is the worms that you can dig out of the soil?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, it reminded me of the phrase of what we're only two or three, maybe it's six. Anyway, we're only a handful of meals away from completely losing our civilization, and how you think you're a good person until you're met with a situation like that, and then you realize that morals aren't there when it's a live or die situation, and it's hard.
Exactly, yes. And I found too, when I was writing my characters for Elia and Hawk, I put a lot of myself into both of them. And when people who know me read the books, they say to me, "Oh, Jason, I see you on all of these pages." And I don't mean that I could be as ruthless necessarily as Hawk, but I can definitely put myself in his shoes and consider what would I do in those sorts of situations where it is all about survival. And then really looking inwards and thinking, is that the way I would want to behave, or are there alternatives to that sort of behavior? So for instance, when Hawk and Elia first meet, Hawk's reaction towards Elia is not friendly at all. And it's really, how can I take advantage of this person to my own benefit? And then him reassessing that as time goes on, realizing that she is a person and that she has her own goals. And again, that's that whole concept of perceptions, that he looks at it one way, but then he can step back and look at it another way.
So one thing I've noticed about young adult literature, which is there's so many arguments about what makes it young adult over an adult story written with teenage protagonists. One thing I've noticed is adult books often take time to set the stage, especially if it's fantasy or science fiction. They take time to let you know what kind of world this is and who the people are and what the conflicts may be, and then they'll finally get around to introducing a protagonist, while YA seems to say, person, conflict, go. And your book is definitely in that person, conflict, go thing. And how do you feel? Is that did you try to start it YA like, or is that your personal style? Excuse me. And start there.
I'd say it's definitely my personal style in many respects, because I definitely wanted to capture the reader's interest immediately. But there was definitely a struggle with setting the foundation. So like you say, creating the world and giving enough details before the story actually gets started. That was one thing that took a lot of time and effort to work out. Because I really wanted the reader to care about Elia and Hawk and what happens to them. And how are you going to care about them if you don't know enough of the backstory? But it was to get to that point as soon as possible. So definitely when it came to the editing of my story, there was a lot of focus on just getting to that moment as soon as possible. So the first chapter was always the first chapter. And then it would go into the backstory of Elia and Hawk. But the goal was always to get to the point when Elia falls to below, that was going to be the key point. And I have received feedback from people where they found the beginning very interesting, but once those two characters meet, then you basically hit the ground running, and then the story just flows forward from that point. So I'd say my nature would have been more the style and the approach of putting more into it before the story starts. But for the market and what we were trying to aim for, it had to be condensed.
Right. So this is your first book, right?
It is, yes.
What can you tell me about you as a writer? How do you approach the discipline needed and the dealing with the self-doubt that almost every writer I've ever spoken to seems to deal with? Unless you don't have it, and then we must know how you slayed that beast.
Well, I definitely dealt with self-doubt, primarily because I didn't have any training in creative writing. I went to university and became an accountant. And so that's what kind of makes my story interesting, is that I started this whole project as a way of like a creative outlet for myself. And I started writing one day a book idea that had actually been in my head for 2 years. And I was absolutely convinced that I would have no time to do it. And my goodness, the idea of actually writing a book seemed impossible. Because after graduating university, I had become a chartered accountant and then a chief financial officer here in Vancouver. So I just had no time whatsoever. But like I said, I really wanted this creative outlet. And so I just started with the first chapter, and that took probably about 2 weeks to do. And then I thought, okay, that's great. I felt the momentum building. I was really pleased with that. And then I wrote the second chapter. And it progressed from there. And so I didn't have to worry about self-doubt at that point because it was really just for my own interest. And then the story progressed along, and 2 years of writing, I finally finished it. Because you have to imagine, I really only had evenings and weekends to do it. And perhaps, if I was traveling for work, I would write on the plane or in my hotel room, and then I would race back home and get it all into the computer. So I reached the end of it, and I thought, you know what? I really like this. I'm really proud of it. I wonder if I could maybe get it published. And so then I did a lot of my research to try and see how that whole process might go about. And that's when I started getting self-doubt, because I realized it was going to be so hard to find an agent, that you couldn't just send your manuscript without first requesting permission to do so. But then I thought, you know what? What's the harm? Like, the worst I can get is a no. And so I did my research to determine agents that would represent this sort of work. And I don't know if it's the accountant in me, but I just put so much effort into crafting that perfect query letter. And then I fired it off. And I'll never forget it. It was a Monday evening, and I fired the email off to a list of 4 agents. And there was sort of a range of experience that they had, and one of them was an agent in New York who was basically the top of my list. But I thought, oh, it's never going to happen, but why not give it a try? And so I sent off the emails, and I closed my computer, and I prepared myself for a long wait to hear back from any of them. And so the next day I went to the office, and of course, what's the first thing I do is I check my emails, and I had said, Jason, don't do this. You're going to drive yourself crazy. And I had a response from the agent on the top of my list. And I was absolutely thrilled. And then I thought, you know what, if he's replied that quickly, it's probably going to be a rejection. And it wasn't. He was interested in the manuscript. And the funny thing is he had sent his response 20 minutes after I had emailed him. So it was past midnight in New York. And I didn't know it had come through because obviously I'd turned my computer off. So anyways, I was absolutely thrilled. I canceled all my appointments for the next 3 weeks because I was sure something was going to happen, and we signed the contract and everything was good to go. But that's when the real work started, in the sense of the editing and really condensing the story. My story was about 120,000 words when I submitted it, and the final published story is about 75,000 words. So there's definitely some cutting to do. So it was during that period where the struggle began, and the questioning myself and my approach, and wondering, like, have I really captured the story that I want, and making sure I could tell the biggest story possible. And because I didn't have the background in creative writing, I definitely wanted to research and do everything I could to make it the best it could be. So that was sort of the process I had gone through. So from the beginning, I started writing in 2008, and the first book took about 4 years to go through the whole process. And that was quite something, actually, to get through all that. And then realized I had 2 more books to deliver on, because we were successful in selling a 3-book deal to HarperCollins Canada first, and then to Turner Publishing in the U.S. So that's where all the hard work really began.
Well, that's really exciting that you got the 3-book deal. How is it came out in August? How have things been since it came out?
So it's been great. So it came out in August, and with Turner Publishing, we've had lots of fun promoting it, planning different things. I've enjoyed doing blogs and interviews like this, and what the benefit that I've had in this whole process is that my agent decided, because I'm a Canadian author, to release the books or to sell the rights first in Canada. So the entire series at this point is actually written, and my third book came out in August just a couple of weeks ago. And what's nice now is that in the US, with Turner Publishing now publishing the book, we can have the books come out in relatively quick succession, one after the other. So whereas in Canada it's a year apart between all three books, in the US it's only about 5 months or so. So the activity that we had in August with the US release will then follow up in February with book 2, and then I believe it's next May with book 3. So that's been quite something.
That's really exciting.
Thank you.
People seem to be doing that more often. Let's get everything written and release it in a short amount of time. Have you found that?
I have found that, and I've had people say to me when they had to wait for the next edition to come out in Canada, they were so antsy, they wanted to know what happened next, and I have to say to them, "Oh, I'm sorry, you have to wait another year before that happens."
Yeah,
and so I can totally understand that, because I'm the same way. Once you get into it and the characters and the plot and things are unfolding, you want as little of an interruption between that as possible.
right.
So that worked out very well in that sense.
So now what is your writing schedule like?
So my writing schedule right now is it's on hold a little bit, partly for the reason that I have been doing promotional things, and also because I had the 3-book deal, I was full board just writing. My first book took 4 or 5 years to write, and throughout that whole time, I was still an accountant. So any of the editing that I had to do was on weekends and evenings. So that whole process took a very long time to complete. But once book 1 was finally done, I was able to quit my accounting job and then write full-time for books 2 and 3. So whereas book 1 took so long, I was able to write and edit and complete book 2 within a year, and then book 3 within a year. And that was basically last fall when I finished the 3rd one. And then what is such a benefit of having my accounting background is that I can do contract work in the meantime. So I've been doing a bit of that, preparing for the releases both in the US and in Canada, and then brainstorming where I go next with my writing. I have 4 book ideas in my head, and it's trying to decide which one now I will focus on as my next project. 2 of them would be possible follow-ups to what I've already written, and then 2 of them would be completely standalone. So, yeah, that's something I have to decide over the next month or 2, because I'm itching to get back at it, to just really focus and sit myself down at the computer and get it all written.
So what kind of questions would you what kind of advice would you give yourself 5 years ago that you wish you knew at the time?
That's a great question. I think the biggest struggle I had was trying to assess the feedback that I would get from people. And it was all great feedback, but that's where I would struggle with sometimes the confidence, because I would say, well, if that's the feedback I'm getting from an expert, let's say in the literary world, I would stew about it and think, well, should I do that or should I go with my gut reaction? So looking back, I would really say to myself, don't worry so much, really trust your gut instinct and tell the story that you want to tell. Because I would say that that's what had started the whole process in the first place. I just started this as an exercise to be creative and to write the story I wanted to tell, to talk about characters that I really wanted to talk about. And so when it came to making decisions or trying to figure out how to best deal with an issue that had come up during the editing, I would really just say to myself, don't sweat it so much, just go with your gut and be true to yourself. And also patient. I would find that, I guess what I love about the whole creative process is that you don't really know where things and inspiration will come to you. And, you wake up one morning and there's nothing on the page. And then you'll start and things will just flow. And by the end of the day, you'll look at what you've written and you'll think, where did that come from? I'm glad it came, but who knew that it was going to happen? There was no guarantee of that. So that would be another thing to say to myself. Just let it happen. Take the time that you need to maybe set it aside and stew about it. It's funny that if you come across an issue with, let's say, your plot, and you don't know how to resolve it, if you put it aside, somehow it's almost like your subconscious is working away on it anyways. And then when you come back to it, lo and behold, you have a solution. Mm-hmm. So that was always an exciting thing to experience.
That's very cool. So, is there anything you wished I had asked you that I have not yet? The one thing that I always like to tell people is some of the inspiration for this book. Okay.
And because often people will say, write about what you know. And in this case, that was definitely the situation. I was really inspired by a trip to Egypt in 2007. And so I have a friend who's a travel agent, and she coordinated this big trip for all of us friends. So we filled a whole bus with people that I knew. And of course, there were beautiful things that we saw, the pyramids and traveling down the Nile on a cruise ship and all those wonderful things. But one of the most momentous things that I experienced, we were out in the desert, close to the pyramids, but not right beside them. And there were the sand dunes, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And I happened to look up into the sky, and I could see something way up high in the atmosphere, but I didn't know what it was. And I thought, maybe it's birds, but then no, it couldn't be birds. And I pointed it out to some of the people I was traveling with, and they had no idea what it was either. So we waited, and slowly it started to descend. And what it was garbage. So I guess the wind had swept garbage out of Cairo and pulled it way up high into the upper atmosphere. And then it started to rain down on us in the desert with plastic bags and just debris and stuff. And it really struck me, this whole concept of you're at this historic site that's been around for thousands and thousands of years. And now here's humankind's modern conveniences impacting the environment, and the plastic and the debris will always be there.
Yeah.
So that was a really fun theme that I wanted to explore in the book. And so when people read it, I hope they sort of anticipate a fantasy and they're sort of wondering what this world is all about. And then realizing that, oh, hey, there's plastic in this environment of Hawk and Elia. And they really don't know where that's come from and what their history is. But it was really an inspiration from years back that came to play in the actual story itself. So that's just a story I always like to share, because it was, who would ever see garbage raining down out of the sky like that?
Yeah.
It's quite something.
That's really interesting. It's fascinating to see what sparks ideas for stories like that.
Yes.
Where can we find you online, Jason?
My website is www.jasonchabot.com. And I have a Facebook and Twitter that you can link to from my website. And yeah, I like to get that updated as soon as possible. And it's been fun, too, because as I have books coming out in Canada and then the US, I have different covers as well that get revealed on there. So it's always fun to see what they come up with.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Jason.
Thank you so much, Mira. I hope you have a great day.
And welcome back to I Should Be Writing. I am pleased to welcome to the show the author of Black Jade, Kylie Chan. How are you, Kylie?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been interested in your work for a while. I think I first came across it in 2010 at the the Worldcon in Melbourne when I believe your book was being relaunched as published by Orbit. Is that what happened down there? No?
No. Angry Robot.
Angry Robot
Had bought the rights. Yes. It was a very exciting time. Tor were talking to me about getting the world rights because I sold the world rights to my Australian publisher, as you do when you're a new author. And Tor were approaching me, and then HarperCollins had the rights taken by Angry Robot, who were then a division of HarperCollins. And when they left HarperCollins and they left the fold and went on their own way, HarperCollins said you can take your entire catalogue except for Kylie Chan. So I was the only author who wasn't part of that deal.
Oh, wow. They wanted to hold on to you
now,
that much.
Yes, I'm now published by HarperCollins US and UK, as well as in Australia. So Voyager all the way.
Wow. Sorry, I got that wrong. I just remember coming across your book and being very excited about it, and I applied the wrong publisher to it.
No.
But
Voyager.
Yes. So what can you tell us about, this is a series of 9 books now?
Yes, it's 9. It's finished. That's the end.
Oh, wow.
So it's sort of a trilogy of trilogies. This was not my original intention. I was going to do the thing where you write a fantasy trilogy, but it grew. And yes, so 9 books altogether, but Black Jade, the last book, is the final book in the series. Closure.
Wow. How does that feel?
Every time people hear that I finished a novel, they go, "Oh, so you're taking a couple of weeks off?" And I'm already 2/3 of the way into a new series, the first book of a new series. So I used to drive people nuts by talking about the next book while I was at publicity for the release of, say I was in the publicity for the release of book 4, I'd be talking about book 5. Yeah, I'm always one step ahead.
Well, that's where your brain is.
Yes.
It's where your brain is.
Stop.
Yeah.
If you stop writing, then you can't pay the bills, basically.
Yes, exactly. So what can you tell us about this epic series you've got?
Right. I married a Chinese man from Hong Kong. And in 1993, we went to live in Hong Kong. He got a great job there. And I went along as the kind of expat wife. Now, I'd been married to him for 10 years already, so I was familiar with Chinese culture. And we lived in Hong Kong for 10 years, and I became even more familiar with Chinese culture. And things like the Monkey King and the 8 Immortals were just part of the tapestry, the landscape of life in Hong Kong. When I returned in 2002, it was the height of the Harry Potter thing.
Right.
I had written plenty of travel logs for my friends, and I'd written user manuals because I was an IT person. And I thought, well, if J.K. Rowling can do it, I can do it too. What am I good at that's different? And the obvious answer was I know Chinese mythology and Chinese culture. So I used that, and because writing a memoir would be boring, I thought, all right, I'll do it with superheroes and gods and demons and martial arts and all that good stuff. When I finally produced the books, it was more like I was translating the wonderful martial arts dramas that I saw on the TV every night in Hong Kong for a Western audience. It's kind of like a homage to those wire-fu martial arts spectaculars that are just part of the culture. Yeah, that's where it was. It's an epic fantasy with lots of martial arts and gods and demons set in the Hong Kong Chinese pantheon, the Taoist and Buddhist pantheon. Yes.
Yeah, it's a fascinating series, and you have studied a lot of martial arts yourself, and that shows through in the work. How long have you been studying Wing Chun?
I had to take a hiatus from Wing Chun about 18 months ago. This never happens in books or movies where you get injured and you have to stop for a while.
Yeah.
So I haven't done it for 18 months, but I've been doing varieties of martial arts for, well, let me see, I started doing Tai Chi when I got pregnant with my first child, and he's now 27.
Wow.
So, yeah, a long time. It was very interesting when I started doing Wing Chun, as I have it in the books. If you've done Tai Chi, then the moves are all the same, just a bit faster.
Yes. So how do you approach bringing that into your books? And it's, I guess what I'm asking is, your experience can bring a lot of authenticity into it, but do you ever worry you're going to be talking a bit too much about Repulse Monkey or something and have people go, what are you talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. I just think of I'm trying to explain it to my mum.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she knows nothing about anything. So I'm writing the books basically aimed at, well, my sister actually, who's wonderful and very supportive. She knows nothing about martial arts, nothing about Chinese mythology. So I imagine that, actually I wrote the books for her just to give her insight into what my life was like when I was living there and what martial arts are really like. It's just, yeah. So I have this person in front of me who would probably be bored if I got too technical about it. And she really enjoyed it, and she's been supportive all the way. The best part of getting the martial arts right is having people come up to me at conventions and things and saying, thank you, you got the martial arts right.
Yeah.
People who are practitioners, that is the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, people who are experts in anything who see hand-wavy things tend to get upset. I have doctor friends who hate it when people get concussions and just keep going.
Yes.
Or get knocked out and no one's concerned.
Yes, they should be going to the hospital, yes.
So, yes.
Yeah. I have one character who gets knocked out and then promptly pukes everywhere.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens. Yeah, sometimes the story is completely devoid of bathrooms.
Yeah. That's true. So this is a 9-book series that you've been working on since, what'd you say, 2002?
Yes.
Okay, I know a lot of beginners come to me with the thing of, I have too many stories. How do I know which one to focus on? And you had to have had stories outside this series that have been poking you. How do you maintain that discipline?
This is a tough question because for me it was always a business. I am an IT consultant. I have an MBA, and I'm going to get burned at the stake for saying this, but the books are a product.
No. Actually, I have another podcast where we talk about the business of writing and basically saying that if you don't write, you don't eat. So you have to look at it that way. So yes, I'm not going to burn you at the stake. I fully am on your side with that.
For me, the books have always been a product, and I have deliberately made the language. I could have written very flowery purple prose with lots of descriptions and very literary, but that's boring and it's not going to sell well.
Yeah.
So I made it easy to read, and I've deliberately aimed at a 9th grade vocabulary and made the action fast so that people won't get bored. And people do come up to me and say, your books are the only books I read, because they are fast-paced easy to read. I'm very visual. So I have designed that product to be popular. I could write it differently, but yeah, I'd like to be a full-time writer. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's what I want to do.
So how would you can tell me a bit how you went about it, or advice you would give to somebody else, knowing what you know now, but how would you go about telling a newbie to look at their career like they're creating product? I mean, what would you say that usually don't hear about writing advice from other people?
I do this all the time at conventions like Comic-Con. We actually have a specific panel where me and some of the comic book artists and writers get together, and we call this panel Crush Their Hopes and Dreams.
Ouch.
The real title is The Business of Publishing. But among ourselves, we call it Crush Their Hopes and Dreams. Because we tell them what book advances are really, how much they really are.
Oh, God, yeah.
And how much, like, I just signed a film deal. Yay!
Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you. This is the 4th offer I've received for movie rights, and we finally, thank you to Alex Adset, my representative, who, there's one whole page of this 32-page contract was what the gross profits of the film would be and what my percentage would be, because it's very easy for movies to not make a profit and then the writer gets nothing.
Yeah.
But people are immediately assuming that I'm an instant millionaire. And I've had to explain to many of my friends that a movie deal, an option on a movie, is usually $1,000 a year. It's not instant millionaire stuff.
Yeah.
When I didn't know any of this when I started out. I just started writing this epic adventure story for my sister. And a friend of mine in the US who's a literary major helped me out so much. She was fabulous. She read it and said, okay, this is terrible. Thank you.
Oh.
You need someone to tell you that it's terrible, because the first work usually is. It was all telling, not showing.
Yeah.
There was a lot of weasel words in it, just basic craft stuff. The story itself was okay, but the way I'd put it together was awful. My writing was terrible. And she gave me 2 textbooks and said, go away and study these. And they were the first 5 pages, and I don't know who wrote that. And the other one was Self-Editing for Fiction Writers. And those 2 books blew my mind, and I went back and I trimmed my prose and I removed all the weasel words, made it all show, don't tell. And at the same time, I know what annoys me when I'm reading a book, and that's having too many characters and you can't keep track of them. So I deliberately kept the cast small in book 1, so it's only 4 main characters with a couple of side people. I didn't stick to that for very long. It grew.
Well, I mean, you wrote so many books. If you kept to like a handful of characters, it would be boring.
It would get boring. Yes. So my friend gave me this, and it is a sort of a writing 101, the basics of the craft. But at the same time, I knew I've talked to so many people being an IT consultant. I knew what people like, and they like fast-paced, easy-to-read entertainment. So that's what I aimed for. And I watch a lot of anime, so I know that angst and a love that can never be and high stakes and really big visual imagery from anime really works very well. So I just cobbled it all together and threw it into my story. I wanted to write a romance because I know that romances make more money than anything else. And it sort of turned into an epic fantasy instead. But I had a lot of fun getting there. It turned from a love story into the war between heaven and hell with Earth stuck in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's a best-selling series, so I'm pretty sure you got some romance lovers and some fantasy lovers and some anime lovers in there.
I hope so, yeah. I wasn't trying to please everybody. I was just specifically writing for one person. And I know that she's smart and she's busy. Yeah. I deliberately made the writing choice not to go with stereotypes. Of course, I wanted to have a feminist element in it and diversity. And so those have been a big focus. But I have focused very much on making sure that the characters aren't stereotypes. So when I have a character that I'm building, I think about what is the most stereotypical character set that person could be, and then do the opposite. Mm-hmm. And that's worked well for me. So there's a librarian who's a 12-year-old boy.
Nice.
That it's just obvious.
So what can you tell us what you're working on now?
Yeah, exploding dragons in space.
Wow, I'm on board.
That's what everyone says. It sounds ridiculous. Yeah, I'm writing a sci-fi. Yay.
Excellent.
It's a big political space opera where humans are kind of stuck in the middle with an ongoing conflict between two interstellar species that are very, very advanced and just happen to drop in on us. And this, these dragons, they travel alone and they search the galaxy for love because they do not procreate with their own species. So they just wander around looking for basically people to marry. They marry everybody and have kids with, because they're pan-reproductive. They have kids with everybody. And there's another species on the other side who think that is awful and that like should only be with like. So there's a war brewing and Earth is stuck in the middle. So I'm having a lot of fun writing about our reaction when someone lands on our doorstep saying, hey, can I make love with everybody, please? Yeah, free love. Yeah. And just how the politics and, yeah, it's great fun.
Excellent.
Of course, at this time, Earth is dying from climate degradation. The oceans have risen, and at the same time, because of the loss of vegetation, the oxygen layer is shrinking, and the oceans keep rising and the oxygen keeps shrinking, and we're looking at about 100 years before the oxygen layer is gone. So we need to start colonizing other planets, and this alien shows up and says, yeah, I'll help you. Just pack everything up, pop in my ship, I'll take you around. Yeah, she's very charming, looking for love. And it's the story of one British soldier who finds herself in the middle of all this politics, and just really out of her depth. Yeah, having to deal with the aliens and her supervisors and everything. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
I love hearing people say that their work is fun to write.
Yeah, I haven't even mentioned the Great Interstellar Potato War.
You haven't mentioned the Great Interstellar Potato War. Should you mention, or do we need to save that? It will not spoil that.
Who would have thought that potatoes would be a gourmet delicacy for other species?
Nice. So, we've got the end of your epic series, Black Jade, out now. We have the Interstellar Potato War. I don't care what you're calling it. I'm calling it that now. Your Interstellar Potato War book upcoming, and an option that we hope will turn into awesome movies in Hollywood. So essentially, you're on fire right now.
I am. It's just this week. My whole life has exploded. The amount of positive congratulations I've received about the movie deal has been mind-boggling. It's a very exciting time for me. Sometimes things just happen, and you stand back and go, wow. And I went and did a workshop about 3 weeks ago, and just before we signed the movie deal, I got a cold from one of the participants. Thanks very much. So I was too sick to really enjoy it.
Oh, no.
That's the way it always happens. Yes.
So, what kind of advice would you give to new authors that you haven't already given us?
Yep. I gave you the titles of those 2 books.
Yes.
They are excellent resources. Now, I do give workshops for beginning authors who come along and give me colds. Thank you very much.
All right, if you ever take one of Kylie Chan's workshops, do not show up and give her a cold.
Show up sick, please. And I don't know about in the US, but here in Australia, I heavily encourage people to join their local Writers' Centre. I don't know if you have Writers' Centre in the US, but what happened with me was that I had I had book 1 and most of book 2 written. Actually, I think I was well into book 3. It was like a dam bursting when I started writing fiction. I'd never written fiction before, and the creative build-up had been there for all my life, and it was like, bam, all of this stuff came out. But the local Writers' Centre had an editorial consultancy where you paid a lot of money and gave them 10 pages, and it was with the head of HarperCollins Australia. And she was talent scouting, and I didn't realize this until after the fact. And she saw my 10 pages of the very weirdest stuff of book 1, where he's telling her about his nature of being two animals at the same time. He's a snake and a turtle at the same time. And he's telling her that one of his animals is missing and he doesn't know where it is. And the editor of HarperCollins thought that was weird and wonderful and asked to see the rest of the manuscript. And that's how I got published in the first place.
Nice.
Is through the Writers' Centre. So whenever I am at workshops and at panels that are otherwise called Crush Your Hopes and Dreams, I'm saying, yes, buy these books, write lots, and go and join your local Writers' Centre and connect up with writers groups and critique groups. Critters on the internet is also brilliant. The CRITTERS.org.
We talk about critters on occasion.
Yeah. I received some fantastic feedback on early short stories from critters. Yeah, they're terrific. So that's my advice. Get out. Don't work in a vacuum. Talk to other people and show them your stuff, and be ready for them to say it's awful. We're all super sensitive about our darling baby manuscripts, but the fact is that if you aren't willing to accept the fact that your first work is not great, and if you've written some Tolkien fan fiction with yourself as the main character, be ready for people to say, hey, this is Tolkien fan fiction and a Mary Sue at the same time.
Yeah.
And move on from that. Yes.
Well, excellent. Where can people find you online, Kylie? KylieChan.com
is my website, and I'm on Facebook as Kylie Chan Author. So, yeah, if you message me through Facebook, I will reply. If you email me through my website, I may reply, but wow, I'm so famous that I can't answer all my fan mail. That's a weird feeling.
That's a good problem to have.
It is a good problem to have. Yes, if I answered everything, I'd never get a word down.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and taking away part of your Saturday to spend time with me.
Oh, thank you, Muir. No, that's the thing about being a writer, is that it's 24/7.
Yes.
Every day. So I'm going to be working on the exploding space dragons.
And the intergalactic potato war.
The great intergalactic potato war.
I can't wait. Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Kylie, for wonderful interviews and taking the time to talk to me. You can find out more about them on my site. I have a link to their books if you want to buy them. And although it is January something, what is it? January 10th. This kind of feels like the last episode of the year because it's all the content I've been sitting on. So I'll say it again, Happy New Year. I hope that 2017 is better than 2016 for you. I'm sure somebody out there had a good year, but I don't know who. to be fair, personally, it was pretty good for me. Nothing terrible happened, nothing great happened, but just in the larger scheme of things, the loss of some beloved celebrities, the loss of friends, family members, politics, it was tough. So if you had a tough year, may it be better. If you had a great year, then keep the momentum going. I will talk to you shortly, but until then, please, you should be writing. Oh yeah, I gotta do all the other stuff. Buy my books. They're coming out January 31st. 6 weeks and book burners. You can support the Patreon at patreon.com/mightymur. And if you want to find me on Habitica or For the Words, I'm Mighty Mur there too. Thanks. I'll talk to you next time.